Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here as always with my good friend, colleague, and co-host Jim Gurulé. And yeah, another good pregame. Jim came to the pregame conversation in a bit of a state of self-reflection, having recently had a birthday, and I came to the conversation really excited about a project I just finished, and the conversation proceeded to evolve into what we spend a lot of time talking about is these self hyphen phrases that we really built our framework around the five areas of life and the flywheel. And in the middle of that wheel, just to remind everybody, is the self, the ego. And what Jim's done over the course of, I don't know now, 2 years, maybe at least a year, is built a library of these self slash or self dash phrases. And today we both came in a state of, I guess, what you could call self reflection. So we're going to begin with that, but we have five phrases that all begin with the word self hyphen. And we'll try and tie them all together. I think the reflection, let me read, Jim, the definition of self-reflection, or would you prefer to pipe up before I do that?
Yeah, like I said, I'll just mention the context of reflection, and as we discussed in the pregame, uh, a birthday is a time of self-reflection. I use it for time of self-reflection, and often I'll receive multiple phone calls every year. So right, so of course my mother will call me, my brother, my sisters, my son, my daughter, and close friends will call. So every year I try to prepare a thought. So if they're going to call me, I'm going to at least say something somewhat entertaining. So, and I change it around every year. But this year my reaction is, uh, well, it's not a reaction; it's a quote. We use it all the time on the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. The imperfection is the perfection. Of course, use that, but it's the one that I think reflects a man in his mid ages, so 50 and above, around that time. And it's a quote that I came up with in a casual conversation with my mother, uh, with her observation of men as they grow older, they grow bitter. So the quote that I use now is, "We grow bitter or we grow better. The default is bitter," and it's true for the following reasons. One, default is because it's not what happens to your life; it's how you respond to what happens to your life, right? That's the other um, something I believe strongly in. But it is a decision, and it takes. The default is to grow bitter and angry, and that's often what happens with old age. Not just men, but men and women. And it takes a lot of work to have a positive outlook, and it takes a lot of work to have gratitude. And so that's what I like to share with them. I have a very very grateful for uh, what I have. So it's appreciation for what you have instead of looking at what you don't have. And I think that's often what we do as a default. You're you feel like at this stage in your life, you this could have happened or this should have happened. And if this would happen, this would have been better. No, I think that always is going to be the case. And it's another quote that often goes, 90% of life is just showing up. It's going to speak to what you're going to talk about later, and that is most people just quit. So just
Yeah,
staying with
it's
it alone
yeah,
is,
yeah. I think the most important component of what you just said, and it's all important, so I caveat that, is that it's all a choice. It's
yeah,
and nobody can really take the choice away from you. The choice is yours unless you give away that responsibility, unless you just spend your time listening to what other people think is best for you, which is probably a fool's errand. But yeah, I love the self-reflection, the self-awareness, the self-confidence. The five we're going to talk about today are really a subset of about 40 or 50 that you've developed.
that's correct.
But it's
That's right.
all
Yeah.
it's all aligned with this idea that everything starts with the self, And if you
Mhm.
exercise control, and maybe that's not the best word, might have a negative connotation, but these are choices. These are, you get to a
Mhm.
certain age. I'm 64, and I remember my 60th birthday. I had a panic attack,
Mhm.
and you talk about self-reflection, like where the fuck did that come from? I never had a panic attack in
Yeah.
my life. But as we
Yeah.
get older, to your point, it's very easy to look back and say what I could have done or what I should have done or what I might have done or and I think that
Yeah.
my old mentor used to say, Mark, everyone's doing the best they can do with what they have in the moment.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
that's true. I think that they are. And even though some people might look lazy or they might be slovenly or that doesn't mean they're not trying the best they can. They just not might not have
Yeah.
the same resources as you or me. And so
Mhm.
I think that's a real wise thing to say. But I
It
think
is.
more than
It's good stuff.
anything, this when I do what I do, coaching men right now, and I've coached people professionally and personally my whole life as a
Mhm.
recruiter and a company owner and stuff. And it's part of my thing is helping people make progress, whatever that might be. And now I've just identified middle-aged men as a very needy group because they're not supposed to talk about stuff. They've been confused by the world as of late. And midlife can be challenging because you begin to start looking at the end versus the beginning when you cross over whatever that halfway point might be. So it all makes sense. But I think the most helpful thing that one can do without overdoing it is self-reflection. And I think
Mhm.
that that's where all this other stuff starts. So let me read the definition of self-reflection, Jim, and then maybe you can bring it,
Yeah,
bring your stuff.
just something I want to insert quickly because this does speak to the framework that we created on the Imperfect Men's Club and these 5 areas of our life. We won't go deep into that, but those 5 areas, just to remind those that don't aren't familiar with them, is in no particular order. Is It starts in the center, and this is, remember, you holding your hand up in the beginning. You say, see in the center, there's the self,
Hmm.
and then you have these 5 fingers, and again, no particular order, but it's, as a man, our self-worth is a lot to do with our profession, our life's work, our career. That may change. That's changing for you and I, what we did and what we do now. And then, of course, um, if you're a government worker versus an entrepreneur like you and I were. But then also our relationship with ourself, that's our mental health, our physical health. Yeah, this does all play out. This is still going on. Our relationship with others, that's, of course, our mothers, our daughters, our girlfriends, our wives, whatever that may be, and our relationship with men, our fathers, and friends and brothers, and so on. And then the relationship with money, which has a lot to do with this because money is a relationship, abundance, scarcity, and what's am I missing? I'm forgetting one.
You
Relationship.
got worldview.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the relationship with the world, and that's
Yep.
our politics. Couldn't be um, more divided at the moment, especially what's going on in the world. Of So yeah, the relationship with the world, and our relationship with ourselves, as far as our childhood, our heritage, and even our spiritual beliefs. So this always comes back to the center of your hand, and that's the center. But self-reflection is again something that um, we do, but maybe not consciously. But it's a pretty powerful exercise. So yeah, let's get started with self-reflection.
Yeah, so self-reflection is the intentional process of pausing to examine your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors to foster personal growth, boost self-awareness, and enhance emotional intelligence. By
Mm,
asking what went well today or why did I react that way, you can improve decision making, reduce stress, and strengthen relationships. I think it's just honest. I think that, we sometimes the people, at least for me, that the person I'm the least honest with is myself.
mhm,
And because we want to think well of ourselves and a lot of these exercises, self-reflection, self-awareness, self-evaluation, whatever, they're just that. They're pausing to step back and quiet the noise and say, what's really going on here? Am I moving in the right direction? Am I doing the right things? Or should I change something? What do I have control over? And what do I need to stop worrying about because I don't have control over it? And in my practice, when I introduce myself to a new human, a new man in this case, I find that they don't spend much time on that at all. It's the
Hmm.
very rare man that pauses, jumps off the treadmill, if you will,
Hmm.
and the wheel and stops and says, "Wait a second. How about I stop doing for a second and just think and just
Hmm.
reflect?" And to your point earlier, I think one of the things that comes when you do that consistently and honestly is gratitude. It's real
Hmm.
easy to lose sight of all the things that we have and spend our time and energy thinking about the things we don't have. I think
Hmm.
that's human nature to some extent. So I think
Yeah, yeah, we'll come
self-reflection is
back to self
wonderful.
gratitude, but to add to what you're saying, Mark, and that's often what we get criticized for the most is not being self aware,
Hmm.
especially as we get older, because we get stuck in our ways, and we either become more rigid or we don't want to entertain somebody else's thought. When you said your mentor, you mentioned your mentor said that everybody's in the best. Who was that? Who was that mentor?
That was Paul Carroll.
That was Paul. Paul. Yeah, I thought it was him, and he's a
Yeah,
listener, and I consider him a friend, a great guy. You talk about, you're again so fortunate to have him, but isn't that a great way to live life? Is to have also give people the benefit of the doubt that they are doing. Most people really want have good intentions. This is a decision. This is a choice, and they are doing the best they can. And I think that if you're really self-aware and you give people space to be their best self, you bring the best out of them instead of bringing the worst out of them. So that's Paul, if you're listening, that's good stuff. And Mark, you were fortunate to hold on to that. As
well, he's a wise man,
Yeah, he is.
and he taught me quite a bit about a lot of things, and I'd like to think that I taught him quite a bit about a lot of things. I think he would concur.
He knows that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he would. I think that's self-aware,
Yeah.
which is the next phrase. Let me read the definition of
Yeah.
self-awareness, if I
Yeah.
may. Self-awareness is the ability to consciously understand your own emotions, thoughts, behaviors, and values, and to recognize how these impact yourself and others. It combines inward introspection with an awareness of how others perceive you, public awareness, driving better decision making, emotional regulation, and improved relationships. Yeah, I think that, again, if I were to speculate, I would say that the vast majority of us are not very self-aware. And I think
Hmm.
that um, it makes it so much more valuable to stop and do the self-awareness exercise as well, which is essentially the next step from self-reflection. It's okay, I've
Hmm.
reflected on this stuff now. Am I consciously working towards these things? Are my beliefs and my values aligned with my actions and my words? And I think that, I've been accused of being self-aware because I think I do. I reflect on that stuff.
Hmm.
I don't get satisfaction from being the same. I try to, even if it's just a tiny bit, get a little better every day,
Hmm.
and better can mean a lot of different things. But one of the things I find in midlife, Jim, I don't know how you feel about this, is I think I'm less judgmental about people and
Yeah.
more grateful
Hmm.
and a little bit more humble. And I just
Hmm.
think that comes with the territory. If you keep getting knocked down, which everyone does in
Hmm.
life, but you keep getting back up, all
Hmm.
those things continue to get better. That's
Yeah.
how you improve on them, I think.
Yeah. Well, that speaks to we grow bitter or we grow better. It's a
Yeah.
decision. And yeah, the other you mentioned humility, or that's something that is hard. It's a painful process, but having humility makes you human. And without some humility, you don't have empathy. And in order to be a good person, you have to have some empathy. That's why I like the quote that Paul said. They're doing the best they can. I have empathy for them, at least trying to do the best they can with what they had to work with, other than being frustrated or angry. So another quote I used to
Yeah.
tell my kids when they were growing up: don't be frustrated, be fascinated.
Yeah.
And that is a choice. Because if you grow angry, then anger creates more anger.
Yeah, you can't fix anything with more anger. You can't
Yeah,
fix anything with two wrongs don't make a right, as they say.
yeah.
One of the things that just popped into my head was, and I've struggled with this my whole life, I think, but it's still something that I wish I was better at. and that is apologizing and
Hmm.
saying you're sorry. I mean, my daughters were here recently for my grandson's birthday, and they live out of the state. So when we get
Hmm.
together, it's great to spend time, and you want that time to be spent mostly positively. But we like to talk about stuff, and we talked about some stuff,
Hmm.
and one of my daughters got pretty emotional, and I reflected back on that, and I thought to myself, did I say that I was sorry? Or did I do anything to be worthy of being sorry for? And it's interesting when I got to that place, I'm like, I don't think I did anything to apologize for, but does that necessarily mean that I couldn't make her feel better by just saying I'm sorry that you were given to such emotion about this topic? That wasn't my intention to make you sad or make you angry or make you anything other than interested. And it's just when I've had to say I was sorry in the past, it's always preceded with, "Oh, this is going to suck." And I don't
Hmm.
know, I don't know why that is. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, I do. In fact, it was one that I had on the list, but I was trying to keep it to five. I just threw it in the chat, and it's self-forgiveness. That's a whole episode in itself. But yeah, it fits into that self-forgiveness. You can read it if you want, if it fits into the conversation today. But
Well,
yeah, the felt
what's interesting about sorry is that if you're talking about business acumen, the general rule is don't apologize. There's a better
Mhm.
way than saying you're sorry. But I think on a personal level, if you've inflicted even inconvenience on someone, but certainly harm, and I mean harm in a very slight way or a very difficult way, it doesn't matter, but you've made someone sad or you made someone angry or and you know that you had some level of influence on it. I think in a personal context, it's helpful. It's kind to say, I'm sorry, even if you didn't necessarily do anything that is deserving of an apology, but it's really something I've struggled with my whole life.
Yeah, it always fits into self-awareness. But I threw in the chat. Read it just because, again, I think it's worthy of bringing into the conversation. So, and
You're talking
then we'll go
about
back to the other ones. But
self-forgiveness.
self-forgiveness, yeah.
Self-forgiveness is the often non-linear process of releasing excessive guilt, shame, and self-hatred after a wrongdoing, replacing them with self-compassion and responsibility. It involves acknowledging mistakes, making amends, and separating one's identity from past actions. Key techniques include cultivating self-compassion, using the four R's: responsibility, remorse, and you ran out on me. I didn't get the second,
Ran it out. But
the
yeah,
last two. But
it's one that belongs in the library of the top, probably five,
yeah,
because
self-forgiveness and forgiveness are different, but they're similar and I
yep.
think that I struggle with self-forgiveness too. And the other thing about sorry is if you're constantly saying you're sorry, that means you're not really sorry because you continue to do things that require you to say you're sorry. So that's the other kind of interesting comparison with
Like you
regard
said, the
to
word
that.
forgiveness has a lot of meanings, but I think to forgive yourself for some things, it's often to beat yourself up some things, whether you're aware of it or not, that you did in the past or you weren't aware of, but taking the time to go through that and then forgive yourself so you can move on and not
So
do
you
it,
can move
repeat it.
on. Yeah, so you can move
And
on. That's the
yeah,
most important piece.
yeah.
So the next one on the list is self-gratitude, and we've talked about gratitude, and I love. It's actually I journal every day, as you know, Jim, and one of the categories that I have to answer for myself is what's called a flow anchor, like being in the flow. Like, what emotion do you want to attach to yourself to flow positively and progressively and forward every day? And gratitude is at the top of my list every time. This
Mm.
morning, I wrote gratitude, and I put a second one down. I put higher expectations, like
Yeah.
challenge yourself. But
Yeah.
but this gratitude thing, self-gratitude is the intentional practice of acknowledging your own worth, efforts, and humanity, rather than only thanking others. It involves appreciating your accomplishments, skill, and resilience, which strengthens self-worth, reduces stress, and improves mental well-being. Daily practices
Mhm.
include journaling, recognizing personal wins, or mindful self-appreciation.
Mhm.
This is one I think we need to remind ourselves of a lot.
Yeah, that's
because
this is
it
why I put it on there. That's why
yeah,
I make it a point every year. I try to do it throughout the year, but that's the first thing I think of on my birthday when somebody calls. I have yeah, it's gratitude. I have gratitude for what I have instead of thinking about what didn't work out or what I don't have. And that's a choice because the default is to be disappointed that something didn't come to fruition or something didn't work out the way you thought it should. And then you grow angry and bitter at the world. And
yeah,
that's
it's isn't it fascinating how the negative choice
yep,
is the default
it is.
and the positive choice requires work.
Mhm.
And I think that
Yeah.
the requirement of work is what makes it more valuable. It's almost
Yeah.
like the negative default, any negative default. When you make a choice and you pick negative,
Mhm.
it's easier. And
Yeah.
it's not easier long term. It'll make you angry and sad and negative, but in the moment, it doesn't require any work. The default, it's just right there. It's available to us, and it's almost a lazy choice, right? So
Yeah. 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 But here's something I'd like to add to Mark. I noticed that the universe, the energy has a way to align itself. And when you come in contact with somebody that's done the work, you could tell. And
oh
then you
yeah.
also have a certain energy that you push out. So that there
Mhm.
is an energy that flows with new acquaintances or even just your interactions of everyday life. If you've done the work and you're in a good place, you push that out to the world and it comes back to you the same way
Yeah.
versus and I've been in those environments. You could tell everybody's somewhat irritated or pissed off, and it just doesn't feel good. You want to get off the call or you want to get out of the room. You want to. It is an energy. So, um,
Yeah, and it makes me think of the many times, and I'm sure you've had similar, when you're walking into a room, this could be a social setting, it could be a board
mhm,
meeting, it could be a business meeting, it could be a
anything.
sales
Yep.
call. Like I have walked into rooms in my life, and I think it's my nature. I like being upbeat. I like
Hmm.
being positive. I like being happy, and it's not fake.
Yeah.
It's me. And but when I'm consciously bringing that joy into the
Yeah.
room, it has a palatable and noticeable
The,
impact on
the the
everyone
the
in the
entire
room.
room, the energy
The entire
rises.
room
Yeah.
rises. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a responsibility, but I think we all have the ability to do that.
Hmm.
Maybe all of us don't think we do, but
Hmm.
I have walked into rooms before and changed the temperature in the room dramatically in a matter of
Hmm.
seconds.
Hmm.
And saying something kind to someone, making someone laugh,
Hmm.
complimenting someone,
Humor is excellent for that.
it's
It just
not difficult. It's not
yeah.
difficult. But I think
Yeah.
that one of the things that I try and teach people is, or remind people, I should say, is that before you engage someone else, you have an opportunity. It might be a matter of seconds, it might be a matter of minutes, it might be hours or days, but you have an opportunity to prepare so that when you engage the person, whether it's a phone call or walking into a meeting or a room or a sales call, it doesn't matter, consciously saying, how can I positively impact the temperature in this room? Because everything else will go better for both of us if I do that. And I think we
Mhm.
throw away those opportunities. I think having a conscious level of preparation to walk into a room to improve the circumstances, at least I do. I throw those away sometimes because we're in a hurry or we're late or we're thinking about something else or whatever. But just flipping that switch before you open the door, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll share just something very related to these phone calls that came in on my birthday. And one of them is, I try to say something that's um, with gratitude, but also something that they'll remember. So as you know, I like frameworks, right? And you've heard of the 4-H Club, right? The 4-H
Hmm.
Club, you know what that stands for? I
Horticulture and harvest. I don't know what
Something
it
like
is.
that. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
I wasn't even close. I didn't even apply. That I was not. Yeah, it's a. I think it's a youth group that for agriculture and
They didn't have them in
it,
Boston, I can
they
tell you
didn't
that
have them.
much.
Yeah, so it was kind of a big thing. But anyway,
You had
so
to
I ended
go
up
out, you had
making
to
up
go out
my
to
own.
you had to go out to the farm to
Yeah,
get the 4-H club thing.
yeah. But as James was like when we made up the Imperfect Men's Club, I decided to create my own 4-H club for men over 60, and I'll let you fill in the blanks. But The first one is the 4 H's: health, right? Mental health, physical health. Part of being gratitude. So, luckily I have good physical and mental health. Also, a big part of our podcast, right? That's why we have those two areas of health.
Hmm. Hmm.
Humor is humor is really hard to hang on to as you get older, especially being able to laugh at yourself. So
Hmm.
to laugh at the world, not take things too serious.
Hmm.
Um, the other one is hair. I have hair, so that's I'm being gratitude that I still have hair at this stage in my life. And the last one I'll leave that for somebody else to fill in the blanks, but it starts with an H. And at this stage of my life, if you can get one of those, I guess that's
Yeah. Wake up with little PD at attention.
yeah. I don't, it doesn't require any medication, and it comes still very natural. And so that's definitely something to be grateful
I am
or
grateful for that
gratitude.
as well. I am great. I think that they're all connected. I think if you're
Yeah,
happier and you're healthier and all
yeah.
these things are, that might just be a litmus test. That might just be
And
proof.
again, it's not that you have to be 100% on the test, but you just be grateful for what you have, not what you don't have. So,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
just thought
yeah.
I'd
No, I'm
insert that.
actually grateful that I don't have hair because it's I don't have to
I
take
can
care
see
of
the
it.
benefits.
Yeah. So isn't it how you look at stuff?
It's all about that. Isn't that great? Yes, it's so much. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's
Ah,
so
it's
many more
funny.
benefits, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's that's a whole nother story for another time. But back to the selves. The next one is self-awakening, and that's a
Mhm.
profound process of spiritual or personal transformation marked by increased consciousness, detachment from material ego, and a shift toward inner peace and purpose. It involves observing oneself without labels, healing past traumas, and embracing authentic living. This journey often starts with a somatic shift in the body.
Mhm.
As I read that, I think to myself, I want to give myself some credit here because I really have spent a lot of time in this area, and
Mhm.
I'm more deeply spiritual than I've ever been. My faith is much stronger than it's ever been. I am consistently journaling and meditating and trying to step outside myself and kind of observe myself objectively. And I'm not suggesting I have that all figured out, but I'm very happy with the idea that I'm putting energy into this self-awakening area on a daily basis, and I can sense the impact. I can sense the peace of mind. I can sense the confidence. I can sense the optimism and the hopefulness. And in a world that we're in now that's so divisive and can be so dark and challenging, I think the self-awakening practice, whatever it might look like for you. I'm not suggesting everyone has to believe in God or journal every day or whatever. There's all kinds of different tools where if you just said, I'm going to give myself the gift of self-awakening for 30 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day or 5 days a week or whatever, it's very helpful. Very helpful. So I think we look at
It's also
self-awakening.
exciting.
Yeah.
Self-awakening is exciting to get excited about an awakening, something that you didn't see before you're awakened, and you then have this level of new energy and new excitement. That's why the self-awakening again resonate with me on a lot of levels. Something I heard
Well,
recently about I'll sure it's kind of related to this, but it's about experiences. We often focus on experiences. We don't learn from our experiences. We learn from reflecting on our experiences.
mhm.
It's related to that. It's reflecting on what you did or right or what you did wrong, and often that's when you can have an awakening of a better future, or letting something go. Uh,
Well, I
is
think
often
that
awakening.
we have a tendency, I think, to look at self-awakening as kind of an epiphany, like a big deal all at once in some, celebratory fashion. When in fact, I think the my experience with self-awakening is it's like everything good in my life. It's small, incremental steps consistently practiced over time.
Hmm.
You don't just wake up one day self-awakened. At least I
Yeah,
don't. I
right,
just,
right. It
I
takes work.
appreciate making the little kind of progress steps every day, building on it. Like a muscle, like the gym. Everything's like a muscle at the gym. It's like You don't do 900 sit-ups on Monday and get ripped on Friday. That's not the way life works, you know? You do
Yeah.
five and then you
Yeah.
do 10 and you do them every day, you know, or you take occasionally a day off, but it's small incremental progress, I think, is a different way of looking at self-awakening. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily an epiphany. It might
Yeah.
be, but not necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think the last one is kind of, I think, if you're practicing the first four, and I guess we've read five because you popped self-forgiveness in there,
Mhm.
that self-confidence is going to improve. I mean, that's the way that you
Yeah.
improve self-confidence, by taking small actions and
Mhm.
doing them consistently over time. So the definition that you've provided, self-confidence is an attitude about your skills and abilities. It means you accept and trust yourself and have a sense of control in your life. You know your strengths and weaknesses well, and you have a positive view of yourself. You set realistic expectations and goals, communicate assertively, and can handle criticism. And, you know,
Mhm.
Jim, you know my story well enough to know that, 15, 20 years ago, um, I got I got whacked, and one of the things I lost for a period of time was my self-confidence. So I've had,
Mhm. Of course.
most of my life I've spent as a pretty confident man, and I had this period of time. I don't know how long it was. It could have been 5 years, could have been 1 year, might have been 10 years. It probably depends on who you ask. But
Hmm.
that mojo, that
Oh yeah.
momentum, that ability to command a room or motivate people or get
Hmm.
big changes done, I was like sucked out of me, and I didn't really, I didn't really understand it, and probably not until I've had a lot more time to reflect back. Like today, I can look back on that and see it for what it was. And I feel very
Hmm.
confident right now, in a good way, not an arrogant way, because I feel humble and grateful too. But
Yeah.
self-confidence is a big deal. You've said it to me
Wow,
before.
it's huge. Yeah.
It's the most important thing in life, you
It
know?
is at every stage of your life, and also managing confidence, not to have too much, because if you're overconfident, things don't go so well. And then also not to have none at all, because people are attracted to people that are confident,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
unattracted to people that are unconfident.
Yeah.
Not another quote I wanted to share is very related to confidence, but this is, as you know, I follow Carl Jung. That's a philosopher, you know, but listen to a lot of his stuff. And something that a quote of his is, "Your greatest problems in your life are not often solved; they're outgrown." So think about that. Your greatest problems in life, you don't solve them; you outgrow them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Really interesting. But you think you're going to solve the problem. Sometimes you can't solve the problem. You outgrow the problem, meaning that you move on to a different place, and that problem doesn't bother you as much. That doesn't affect you as much. It's a very different way of looking at solving a problem.
Well, I think a lot, I mean, this is just my opinion that's coming to mind as you say that, but I think a lot of the problems that we have are, we create them ourselves, you know, and we don't, some of the problems that, you could listen to someone else's problems, for instance, and think to yourself, that's really your biggest problem? Shut the fuck up. Stop whining, you know?
But
And
yeah, but even to talk about a relationship, right? Whether it was your ex-wife or business relationships that I've had that didn't work out, it's when I outgrew it. I mean, I didn't care about it anymore. I didn't really change that person, or I didn't change the outcome. I outgrew the problem, and I moved on to something else. It's just a
yeah, I mean,
different way
it's,
of looking at out of a
yeah, no, you're
problem.
right. When you bring up my ex-wife, the thing that I did to move away from that is just stop caring about it, because it
Hmm.
was not serving me and it was requiring a lot of my attention and energy, which basically takes your attention and energy away from other things that are better spent your energy and time on. And
Yeah.
time is, it's like breaking up with somebody, breaking up a relationship. I've had this discussion with my daughters and some of my friends. It's like there really is, there's only one thing that can solve the sadness of a breakup, and that's time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we started this and we're kind of getting towards the end of it. I did want to mention that I came to this discussion with my a project I just completed. And
Yeah, let's take a couple extra minutes. I think it's worth it. We're over our 30 minutes, but that's okay. I think this, but I do want you to share that, because it speaks to I believe, probably most exciting times ever to be alive, as far as what's going on with technology, AI specifically, and I'll let you speak more to that, but also this knowledge, this wisdom, this life lived experience that now we could share with the world in ways that was just unthinkable a short few years ago. And so,
Well,
yeah,
there's two in my mind, there's two worlds converging here. One is my lifelong expertise
yeah,
in helping people make professional progress.
yeah,
And that's attracting people that are interested in that kind of help and
right.
then engaging them in exchange for time and money to help them with advisory or agency services along this professional progress. And it's so many
Yeah,
things
very
we've touched
related to
on.
why we do the podcast weekly,
Yeah,
right? It's the impact that we want to have.
it's the
Sure, there's
same
some
work.
monetary gain
Yeah.
from it, but that's not our driving force. Our driving force is to push this out to people that could benefit, or particularly men at this stage in their life. But yeah,
Well,
so
it's I can't remember who I first heard it from, but it's like what the money does, the service fees is it just allows us and encourages us to make ourselves available to more people, to help more people. And I think that the reinvesting of that is, whether it's resources to make things better, more deliverable, more high quality, more accessible, whatever it is, requires an investment of time and money. So it's not a nonprofit kind of thing, but it's not at this stage in the game, it's not about the money. It's about,
mhm,
can we accumulate enough resources to make ourselves more helpful to more people? Because I
mhm,
think
mhm.
personally, my opinion, and it's not a sob story, but I think a lot of men in this country and in this world in middle age are struggling. And it's
Oh,
confusion,
no
it's
question. The
confidence, it's
statistics
health, it's finances. The data
demonstrate that.
suggests
Yeah,
that men are struggling. And
yeah.
so I think it's a passion. And I think that, this project was really the convergence of something I've been thinking about for a long time, which is how do we qualify the men that we can help? And in the same vein, can they qualify us? Can we both
Mhm,
get to a better place where we have enough knowledge of who we are, enough trust in who we are, and enough confidence that we have the expertise to be helpful? Well, that's kind of an assessment process, and we've talked about it for years. But
mhm,
with
mhm.
AI's advocacy now, I took Claude, as you now
Yeah.
know, and I spent a couple of days building an assessment, an interactive AI-driven assessment that has
Mhm,
weighted answers, that gives me a report and gives the prospect a report that says, here's where this report says you are in terms of
mhm. There's something I want to
available.
interject in this, Mark, that I think
Yeah.
is important to mention because some of these materials I remember you had developed 5 years ago. This is part of your 7 pillars that you created. So this is not necessarily new content. This is
No.
materials that you've spent maybe a lifetime acquiring or aggregating to now where you have this technology to push this out in a completely new way. So
Yeah,
I think
you know
that's
what's
important
interesting to
to
your point,
remember.
Jim. Yeah, to your point, it's when I told you this when I first started playing with AI, I recognized immediately this is
Yeah.
just like interviewing a candidate. You
Hmm.
know, you don't know anything about this person.
Hmm.
Your goal is to try and help them, but you don't have enough information yet to know whether
Yeah.
you can. You certainly don't have enough information to know how you might,
Right.
what you could do for them or whether you can help them. And part of them being helped is them being ready to be helped, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this assessment brings those two worlds together. It's a series of questions, many of which I spent my life asking in
That's
interviews.
right.
What's
Yeah.
going on? Who are you? What do you
Mhm.
want to do?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? What's in your way?
Yeah.
What do you really love to do? What do you hate to do? Why? Why is that important to you? It's just like it's a
Hmm.
contextual smorgasbord where at the end of this
Hmm.
assessment or conversation or interview or whatever you want to call it, that person knows whether I can help him or not. And I know whether I can help him or not, and a little bit more
Hmm.
about how I might be able to help him. So it's in the
Hmm.
interest of both parties, the prospect and the owner of the service, in my estimation, to get that process like I have now. What I finished was it's automated. You go to a URL and you take a very simple series of steps that takes about 5 minutes. And then I get a picture of your circumstances and you get a little bit more information about how I think and how good
Hmm.
I might be at these types of advisory services so that when at the end of that 5 minute investment in time, we can both make a good decision. about what the
Hmm.
next
Hmm.
step is. And so, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a convergence of a lot of different things, and I'll probably turn it into a skill,
Hmm.
because I think this assessment process will come in handy for us as well.
Well, yeah, it's something like you said, we'll include in part of the services we offer through the Imperfect Men's Club. And then, what you're doing is even an extension of that or even a starting point. So it all becomes, related to the same
Well,
cause
I
of,
think it's nice, and we can end on this if you'd like, but I think it's nice that the work that you do independent of me and the work that I do independent of you, we bring a lot of that to our collective energy.
yeah,
You learn from me, I learn from you.
yeah,
Like I brought this to your attention today. It's just a flavor of something we've discussed for years, but now
yeah.
I'm far enough along that you and I can borrow it for the Imperfect Men's Club, and we're farther along than we would have been if we were independent. I love that about what we're doing.
Yeah, and frameworks, right? You have your framework, and then we have our framework, and then we blend those, and there's some continuity to frameworks are really important because there's so much information out there, and if you don't have that framework, then it just spins off into nothing, which is
Yeah,
typically what consulting does.
yeah, they organize and simplify things. And I
Yep.
think that just as a reminder for everybody, we're still moving forward with regard to our services offerings and our website and
Hmm.
our online presence. And really would appreciate anybody that this message has resonated with. We're still looking for reviews and stars on the Apple platform. And Apple's actually coming out with video. They're serving video soon. And so we're going to have a decision to make there, Jim, as to whether we want to put our video out there, because we do record our video. We just only
Yeah.
publish our
That's,
audio at this
yeah.
point.
That's,
So
yeah.
there's some exciting stuff coming up. So any
Yeah.
support you guys could give us, share it, repost it, whatever you can do to spread the word. And thanks for listening.
Yeah. All right, Mark. Until next week.
Thanks, Jim. See you, man.